As far as I'm concerned, there's three types of people in life. There's people that make things happen, people that watch things happen, and people that ask, what happened? And I think that in our career, we have to be very, very careful to be strategic in terms about how we manage the jobs that we have and how we think a little bit about our future so that we can prepare and have a very, 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 very good and fulfilling work life. And that requires, in my view, the ability to answer three really, really important questions. So the first one is the first question is where do you want to work? And again, a lot of people don't think very hard about this, but actually I think it's a really, really important issue. Number two, what industry should you be in? And again, as business majors, you have quite a lot of choice of industries. And so that's, in my view, a strategic choice that one wants to think about. And the third one, of course, is what role do I want to play? For it turns out that our degree is only really, really important in the early years of our career. As we move on in 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, people really don't care that much about what your degree was, where you went to school, and so on and so forth. As well, you know, one of the greatest entrepreneurs of the 20th century was Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was a college dropout. Probably some of you have seen him doing the commencement address at Stanford. You got to think about it. This is truly ironic.
I'm sorry,
right?
did you say
College
Steve
dropout addressing the graduating class at Stanford, you know? So at some point, mostly people don't really care so much about what our degree was. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of truth to this one. Anyone who isn't confused here doesn't really understand what is going on. Okay, so where do you want to work? This question is actually, I think, a very interesting one. Americans may not think that hard about it, but I know people from other nations do. And that is the nation where you were born. The nation where you were born, that thing where our heart lies, this nation state, in many respects can be a very difficult place to have a really successful career. And so in my views, I think we're all rather lucky. And I'll say we're rather lucky because we happen to be in a nation where there's a fair amount of upward mobility. I won't say it's perfect, but it's not that bad. And number two, you happen to live in a state called California. California is the fifth largest economy in the world. It has more GDP than the entire nation of the UK. There's unbelievable opportunity here in Southern California and Northern California or in San Diego. Other nations, of course, are not so lucky. So the first question is where do you want to work? It may be that you want to work somewhere else in the world. And the interesting thing, everyone, is that you have the option. You have the option to work in lots of different nations, provided you can speak English, which again is the international language of commerce mostly, and you have a certain type of skill that's in demand within that nation. And so to me, this is a very, very strategic decision. Not every place in the world is worth putting down roots. Some nations are going to do much better in this century than other nations. I'm just going to give you one quick example, which is Singapore. 30 years ago, I was reading a research report that said Singapore would have one of the highest per capita GDP in the world in 30 years. Well, 30 years have gone by, and yes, Singapore has one of the highest GDP levels per capita in the world. So the nation is, that nation state, again, it's just a small number of about 5 million people, has really, really, really prospered. And it's a great place for expats for a lot of reasons. But again, as you know, some nations are going to really suffer as climate changes, and other nations may be doing better. So to me, this is a really strategic decision. Where do you want to work? I don't know if anyone wants to set up a business and then they can just cruise the world. I don't see any positive on that one. Anyway, probably thought about that, right? Well, today we can. Okay, so where do we want to work? Number two, what industry do you want to be in? This image here is symbolic of a lot of the marketing books. Those of you that have marketing class, for some odd reason, I don't get it, but almost every marketing textbook, especially the intro one, is going to assume that you're going to be a person that works in a product. You're going to make a product. And number two, you're going to make a consumer product. That's what you're going to do in life. Well, if you've ever looked at the numbers, you find out that 80% of GDP is in services and only 20% are in products. So the issue is a really, really important one. In the 21st century, some industries are going to grow a lot. Some industries are going to decline. And I've always told my students when they graduate, it's always better to have a job than not have a job. And so the first job may not be a strategic one, but it's better to get work than not have work. But your second job should be based on a strategy you have to grow your career in an industry which is growing quickly, not an industry which is in decline. I like this picture here because it represents an industry in decline. A lot of people look at me really funny saying, well, like, wow, that's like Mercedes. Yeah, my gosh. Okay, that's a really expensive car. It looks really great. What do you mean?
What is a, I'm sorry, Professor, what is a GT something that you were
GDP?
Speaking about?
Yeah, stands for gross domestic product. It means the rate at which the economy grows. So China's gross domestic product has been growing about 3 times to 4 times faster than Americans' GDP for quite a number of years. But the American GDP is much higher than everyone's right now because we started from a higher base. And so when you look at growth rates, you're going to see certain industries are going to grow much faster than other industries. And I like this symbol here because it tells me that there's a certain industry in decline. Everybody looks at me and says, well, automobiles, isn't it a great future there? And I say, well, probably not. Number one, this car burns fossil fuels. That's definitely an industry in decline. Fossil fuel consumption, right? Because we're moving to green. So we're transitioning economies from fossil fuels to green energy. So green energy is where the jobs are. Does that make sense, everyone? Not the fossil fuel sector. Okay. And the other thing is, there is some argument, but some people feel that many people won't own cars anymore. Or in the future, in 20 years, you'll just rent a car. It'd be like you just rent Uber time. And you don't necessarily need to own one, but you need to have access to one. So again, what industry do you want to be in? Final point on industry, everyone, and this is again something really important. Let's say that you start in an industry which is likely to be in decline. And I'm just going to choose one. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I'm going to choose retail. Retail sales, retail, like the big box retailers. Okay. It looks to me like things are moving online. So we're going to say, just for the sake of argument, that the retail sector is going to decline and continue to decline. Let's say you get your first job in retail. And it's fine, by the way. Again, getting a job is better than having none. But here's what happens. After 5, 6, or 7 years, somewhere in that time frame, it's very hard to get out of your industry. And what happens is HR people in other industries will look at you and say, well, let me use the example here. Raphael looks really, really good, but he doesn't have any experience in our industry. Does everybody see what they do? And so they exclude a lot of really talented people from other industries under the thought that they don't have experience in our industry. So at one level, one has to think ahead a little bit to kind of make sure you will have a good place to work in kind of a longer term 20, 30-year context. And so again, please be aware of that about HR in normal times. All right, last one. What role do you want to play? So last thing I want to say, everyone, is in the world of work, we're playing roles. Some of us are playing workers, some of us are playing managers, some of us might be executives, some of us might be engineers, some of us might be computer science people, some of us might be office managers. So in social psychology, they say that all of us in life, in work life, will have a role. We'll choose a role to play. And again, if we play the same role for 15 years, it's very hard to get out of that role. Same thing with stuck in an industry. So you can become typecast. So the idea then is that what role do I want to play on the stage of work? And I oftentimes think about work as a stage. It's just like, you know, in a family, I might be playing the role of husband or the role of wife, and I might be playing the role of uncle, and I might be playing the role of aunt. And then you get old and you're playing grandmother and grandfather and so on and so forth. So the role that we play is actually very, very important. And we want to think a little bit about the role, especially in relationship to the evolving intelligence, which a lot of people are calling artificial intelligence, machine learning, and of course, AI. And AI is an interesting thing. We humans have never done this before. We've never created an intelligence. I mean, you know, we really haven't, right? I mean, I guess we modified dogs, and we could say we made dogs more friendly and our best friends, so to speak. And we've done that by, you know, breeding practices over thousands of years, but we've never created an intelligence. We've never created an intelligence that potentially is going to be more intelligent than we are. And so in that context, we have to think a little bit about, okay, they're not that smart now, but well, in 20 years, they might be pretty intelligent. Therefore, what role can I play in the world or in society, which will allow me to prosper in a world where machines are becoming increasingly intelligent and potentially maybe running entire corporations. And that's why I say a lot of my students sometimes don't think about a job in this context of, in 10 years, will this job exist or will it be largely performed by machines? Okay. Or it could be 5 years, maybe, depending on what area you're in. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. So this, again, is something that I think we all have to think a little bit about. And I kind of like this image here of a turtle trainer, so on and so forth. Again, I don't know. I guess turtles can be trained, but again, it's probably not a position we all want. So again, everyone, I just wanted to say that I hope you gained a little bit in terms of strategy. We all need a career strategy. And so in my view, the three fundamental elements of a good career strategy are, number one, where do I want to live? What nation do I want to live? And in some cases, it may be what part of the nation do I want to live in? Because some areas within a country can be more prosperous than others. Number two, what industry do I want to exist in? What industry has really good long-term growth potential so I can grow with the industry and advance versus an industry which is in decline, which of course we know will traditionally shed labor as a result of the decline process. And then finally, the most important one of all is which one is a good role that I can play in the world of work. Okay, so I just want to close with the words of a very great human being, a Nobel laureate in literature, was also a leader of a nation during a very difficult time. His name happened to be Winston Churchill. And one of the things he said that's always struck me is the immemorable words that if you're in hell, keep going. So thank you very much, everyone. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.